There were two notable releases that have come out in the past week. The first of which is the one that everyone is talking about, Madam Web. I went in the other direction and decided to watch the new Bob Marley biopic. How is it? Let's get into it. I'm not here to convince you that Bob Marley One Love is a perfect movie. Even a good movie for a lot of you. Some of you might not enjoy this at all, and I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of the critical acclaim, or lack of critical acclaim, that this film has really received over the past week. However, I found that there was a lot to enjoy here, a lot of charm here, and it actually made me feel something, surprisingly, because its shortcomings can really sink the experience for a lot of viewers, which I will definitely get into. But I really want to highlight a lot of the positives too, because I don't think that has actually been talked about enough. This really explores a lot of the monumental years in Bob Marley's life that are really well known if you know anything about Bob Marley, which can be a sign of disappointment as you may want it to go a little bit deeper. But there are enough elements that I found to be new and interesting enough and worthwhile in exploring, such as more of a look behind the curtain into a little bit more of his personal life, a little bit of a look at his relationship with his partner. Both are performed beautifully. Kingsley Ben-Adir and Lashana Lynch are fantastic in this movie. I think that when we get scenes that have the both of them, they're the highlight of this film. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen too frequently, but when it does, it is definitely the best moment of the movie each and every time. They are fantastic together. They have excellent chemistry on screen, and I really think they understood the assignment here, and they really understood how important it is to play these people. Bob Marley is a real important figure in music. I think he really transcended music and had a very strong message, which may have been slightly forgotten about in terms of people really only acknowledge Bob Marley a lot now due to promotion of weed culture and everything like that. And while that is an aspect of Bob Marley's life, it's not everything. I think there's a lot more to him that doesn't get talked about enough when his name comes up, which is a bit of a shame because he stood for so much more than that. And unlike a lot of musical biopics where we get through the greatest hits of their career while also dealing with a look behind the curtain of the iconic figure, in this one, once again, Bob Marley stood for so much more than just his music. So some of those scenes actually hit me a little bit harder, and I actually felt something during this movie, which is not something I can say for a lot of musical biopics. I actually like this a lot more compared to many other musical biopics. Even if it has a bunch of flaws, it really isn't perfect. And I'm willing to accept that. However, I'd rather take a less polished movie that makes me feel something over something that is immaculate technically and I feel nothing. I am going to the movies to feel something. And this is what this ultimately made me do. I was on board with this journey throughout the entire film. I was never bored. It actually goes by at a pretty brisk pace. The performances are engaging enough, and some of the bigger emotional sequences have a really nice payoff that it sets up in the beginning. It's all very basic, but it works. It doesn't need to be all that flashy, and in some cases I'm actually glad that it's like that, and it just sticks to the basics and nails what it needs to really bring home a nice movie about Bob Marley. Is there definitely more to explore? For sure. I definitely recommend the Marley documentary if you haven't seen it. I think that gives you a pretty good, well-rounded view of Bob Marley's life and the impact that he had. That came out many years ago, and I think that's so informative and probably makes this a better viewing experience as a movie overall. I think if you are going into this expecting to learn the ins and outs of Bob Marley, this might not do it for you because, once again, it works at a pretty brisk pace. It doesn't go through everything. It just kind of hits the bullet points, which can be a little bit of a disappointment for sure. The Marley estate is very heavily involved with this movie as well, And that kind of works both for and against the film in some aspects, because I do think it shaves off a lot of maybe the uglier parts to this story that could have been explored, while also telling something a lot more wholesome and heartwarming and making the audience feel good. And there's nothing wrong with making the audience feel good at the end of the day. And I think it does succeed in doing that and telling just a really, really nice story that has a nice focus on family, while also exploring the life of Bob Marley and some of the inner conflicts he had. So I do think it works fine enough for the movie, but we could have gone even deeper. And I do think the Marley estate and their heavy involvement with this movie probably prevented that from happening. My problems with this film really stem from how it performs technically. Reinaldo Marcus Green, director of King Richard, is directing this film, and I don't think he hits it as hard as what he could have here. I think technically this film kind of falls by the wayside. It falls into a very generic structure. There's certain elements that almost feel cliche within this genre, and I guess it just does show how prevalent some of these behaviors were in music, I guess. But the fact that this is another movie with another sleazy manager that's doing crooked deals behind the artist's back, we have just so many of these just typical tensions in the film that you've seen in a billion other musical biopics, and that is definitely a sign of disappointment. And I also couldn't help but notice, I know it's been claimed that Kingsley Ben-Adir sings for real in a lot of these scenes. I do think that's the case when he's in the studio, but when he's on stage, to me it looks like it's been poorly lip-synced. I don't know if that is a problem with the sound mixing, or they actually are lip syncing when he's on stage, because it just didn't quite look right. I really think they also missed a lot of the stage presence that Bob Marley had. There are flashes of it for sure that do work, and I think Kingsley Ben-Adir once again really commits to the role. He's doing it all. He's almost trying to win an Oscar with this role, and I think he does do a fantastic job. As I said, he really understands the gravity of this role. He's embodying Bob Marley. The voice is pinpoint accurate. You couldn't tell them apart. But I just wish in the screenplay that we got to see a little bit more of Bob Marley on stage. There's also this metaphor that plays out throughout pretty much the entire movie about Bob Marley's father. And I just think it doesn't work. I understand what it's going for, and I am definitely on board with what it's trying to do. It's just the way it's executed just feels so sloppy, and it just really hits you over the head. I just think it could have been executed better. Lastly, the songs. I really, really like Bob Marley's music. He does have so many impactful songs that mean so much to a lot of people. And I do like some of the implementation of the songs. Some of them really work. I think Redemption Song was one that really stood out to me. But then some are just utilized to almost hammer home the message of some of these scenes and the themes that they're going for. And that just feels so unsubtle, and it just doesn't work as well. I would have preferred if they were utilized a lot better and had a lot more purpose than just explaining to the audience what the scene that just happened meant, because this film isn't overly complex. I don't think you need to spell this out for the audience. But yeah, once again, going back into positives, I enjoyed my time with this movie. Is it one that I'm going to be talking about forever? No. But in terms of just a good musical biopic about a really impactful figure in history, I think it hits all the marks it needs to. It made me feel something. I really, really enjoyed this. It does capture the amazing essence that Bob Marley had. The acting is on point. Really, really at an elite level here. And if I had to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down for this movie, I'd give it a thumbs up despite all its flaws, because it was able to not only tell a lot of important aspects of Bob Marley's life, but do it in a way that feels right at home in a film and works fine enough for me. As a score, I'm going to give Bob Marley One Love a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a good enough movie. It isn't brilliant technically, but it has so much heart to it, and I really, really appreciate that. And once again, I go to the movies to feel something, and this succeeded in doing that. So for me, it definitely gets a thumbs up. I think it's a good movie. And I think if you like Bob Marley, you like his music, and you know a little bit about him, this might be a pretty good movie for you to enjoy. If you are someone that wants to discover a little bit more about Bob Marley, I do recommend that documentary. I think that is far more informational to you in just really recapping a lot of what Bob Marley represented, the true power of what he was able to do through his music and through his ability to make people connect to one another, even when they're on completely opposing sides and at war with each other. Anyway, those are my thoughts towards Bob Marley One Love. Let me know what you think about the movie in the comments below. I'm sure a lot of you probably disagree with me. I have seen the reviews. I completely understand if it's not your thing. But as I said, I came out enjoying it. And I hope you did too. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.